The rain no longer fell. It poured down as if the sky had burst open, lashing the ground with fierce whips of water, tearing apart the stillness of the night. I stood motionless under the flickering light of an old gas station canopy, along Highway 74, nearly 50 miles from the city of Charlotte. The storm turned the cracked concrete into a shattered mirror, reflecting broken beams of light from a rusty neon sign. Everything around me blurred, much like my own life at that moment. I was soaked, my hair heavy with water clinging to my cheeks, lipstick and mascara smeared so that my face looked like a ruined painting. But the worst pain wasn't the cold or the dampness that seeped into my bones. It was the image of Travis's shiny black SUV fading into the storm, its taillights glowing red like mocking eyes. The last sound I heard from him wasn't an apology, not even regret. Just his cold, detached voice. "I need space, I can't take it anymore." Then the door slammed shut, and he walked away without looking back. I stood there, no longer holding an umbrella. It had snapped in half when I tried to chase after him from the restaurant parking lot nearly an hour ago. I had no coat, just a silk dress I had thought would make tonight special. Travis had suggested a fancy dinner to rekindle our spark. How bitter it felt now, realizing I was standing alone in a storm he had created. My phone blinked, low battery. I opened it, the screen blurred with raindrops, the number clear. 3% battery left. I tried opening the banking app, my heart pounding at the balance. $38.50. This morning, our joint account had over $2,000. I scrolled quickly through the transaction history. A withdrawal of $800 at 4 p.m. Right when Travis said he needed to take a call while I was picking shoes for dinner. He hadn't just left me in the storm. He had paved the way for his disappearance. I gasped for air, feeling as if I'd been swept away by a real storm. Thunder boomed, lightning lit up my reflection in the convenience store window behind me, a 32-year-old woman who thought she had found her home, now standing here like someone lost. I pushed the door open. The smell of plastic, stale coffee, and cold air conditioning hit my face, snapping me back. A young clerk in an apron, his hair dyed a pale blonde, looked up at me, his eyes caught between curiosity and caution. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I met his gaze briefly, though my voice cracked as I tried to answer. "I'm fine." Of course I wasn't fine. I was cold, scared, and falling into a pit Travis had shoved me into without hesitation. I stumbled toward the old coffee machine, trying to pick a flavor. None would warm me now. My hand hit a button, the machine groaning and shrieking as if protesting. I poured a bland cup. I needed something to help me stay upright. The rain kept pounding the metal roof, as if trying to tear apart this flimsy shelter. I looked out, the parking lot light flickering like it would go out. No more Travis. No more car that once took me everywhere. No more promises. The worst part wasn't that he left, it was how he did it, as casually as dropping a bag of trash by the roadside. I raised the coffee cup to my lips, but all I tasted was bitterness, like the betrayal seeping into my blood. The shop's doorbell jingled as a stranger entered. I didn't look up right away, partly because the weariness made me cling to the faint warmth of the coffee, partly because I was used to no one noticing me. But the air in the store changed, as if the cold wind from outside had dragged in something heavy, grounded. The young clerk stopped chewing his gum, eyes wide at the newcomer. I slowly turned my head. Standing by the door under the flickering light was a man in a dark windbreaker, rain dripping from the brim of his hood onto the dirty tiles. His gaze swept the store and settled on me. It wasn't a scrutinizing look, nor pity. It was the look of someone who had seen too much to need to ask. It took me a few seconds to recognize him, David Hale. I'd met him a few times at company year-end parties Travis took me to. Travis introduced him as a senior security officer hired for sensitive projects. Back then, David always stood on the sidelines, quiet, no drinks, no small talk, just watching as if guarding something precious. Now he walked slowly toward me, no rush, no added pressure. His voice was deep and steady. "Are you Riley Hale?" I gave a small tilt of my head, my throat tight. "Are you okay?" A question that seemed so simple but made me tremble. All evening, No one had asked me that. I pressed my lips together, trying to answer as evenly as I could. I'm fine. But the words came out thin as wet paper. David looked me over more carefully. My dress clung to me, my hands shook around the coffee cup. How left you here? Words failed me. David's question held no judgment, just confirmation. I gave the smallest tilt of my head, my eyes stinging. In this storm? He didn't raise his voice, but the question hung in the small room heavier than the thunder outside. David gripped the strap of his bag at his side as if to steady himself from showing any other reaction. Then he exhaled slowly. Where do you need to go? North Pine, I whispered, then lowered my head. But I don't have a car. And my account's empty now. Let me give you a ride, you shouldn't be here alone. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, out of habit, waiting for Travis's approval before accepting help. But Travis wasn't here anymore, and I was tired, cold, lost. Thank you, I really appreciate it. David didn't say anything more. He simply motioned for me to follow, then turned to the clerk. I'll take another coffee, black, to go. Outside, the wind slapped my face as if to wake me from a daze. David's gray pickup sat under a streetlight that cast a dim glow on the pooled water. He opened the passenger door, waited for me to get in, closed it gently, then walked around to the driver's side. The truck was strangely warm and clean, the smell of leather mixed with the fresh scent of coffee. Without asking anything else, David adjusted his seat and started driving. The silence between us at first felt as heavy as the storm still raging outside. I gazed out through the fogged-up window, streetlights smudged into streaks, trees along the roadside bent under the wind. After we had put some distance between us and the gas station, David finally spoke, his voice steady. How long has this been going on? I swallowed hard, not turning to look at him. What do you mean? The way he treats you. That question struck the deepest part of me. I wanted to deny it, to say Travis wasn't always like that he was under work pressure, that maybe this was just temporary. But I couldn't. David didn't need me to answer. He went on, his eyes focused on the road ahead. I've seen a lot of people in my line of work. The way he looked at you, the way he kept people away from you at those parties. I could tell. The isolation, the control, and in the end, the abandonment. I turned to him slightly surprised. You noticed me all this time? From the first time I saw you standing alone in the corner, trying to start a conversation but always having him cut in. I don't like seeing that play out over and over. The truck sped through the rain. I said nothing more. I just let my tears blend with the moisture on the window and let David drive me away from the storm Travis had left me in. The truck glided along empty roads, the sound of rain tapping steadily on the windshield like the erratic beat of my heart. Outside, streetlights blurred behind the gray curtain of water. I sat curled in my seat, gripping the seatbelt as if it were the only thing tethering me to reality. David kept his eyes on the slick road ahead, but the air in the truck wasn't tense. On the contrary, it gave me a sense of safety I hadn't felt in so long. A while later, after we had cleared the winding roads and the ride grew smoother, he spoke softly, his voice low and patient. Riley, have you ever asked yourself how you ended up in this situation? That question felt like a gentle tap, but it awakened everything I had tried to bury. I stared out the window, trying to swallow the lump rising in my throat. Yes, but I'm too afraid to think about the answer. David gave the faintest tilt of his head, his eyes still on the road. Sometimes the answer is clearer than we want to believe. Do you know how long Travis has been planning for this? I turned to him, startled. You know something? David drew a deep breath, his voice calm but edged with steel. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. But I've seen the way he handled conversations around you. He always made them awkward, so you'd withdraw. He turned jokes into ways to belittle you, then laughed it off like it was nothing. Do you remember the Christmas party last year? At your boss's house? I flinched. The memory rushed back. Me standing alone by the buffet, fumbling for a drink. A co-worker of Travis's, I remember his name was Mark, started making small talk. Less than a minute later, Travis appeared, took my arm, cut in, and steered me away, saying, Riley's shy around crowds. Don't tire her out. At the time, I felt embarrassed, thinking Travis was just looking out for me. Now I saw the truth. The confession broke free, soft and strained. He isolated me without me realizing it. David continued. Not by outright forbidding things. Just quietly cutting one thread at a time that connected you to others, friends, coworkers, even family. They disappeared from your life without you noticing. I shivered. I had turned down so many invitations, so many chances, because Travis said, "You're tired, you need to rest," or "We're all we need, Riley." Sighed bitterly. He made me believe he was the only one who truly understood and loved me. David glanced at me, his eyes a mix of compassion and firmness. That's how he kept control. Just had to own your thoughts, and when you had no one else to lean on, that's when he started to manipulate you however he wanted. The quiet stretched between us for a long time. The truck kept moving, the wipers beating their rhythm. But inside me, the thick fog was starting to tear apart. David, why are you helping me? He smiled softly, a sad smile. Because I watched my sister go through the same thing. She thought her husband was just overly protective. By the time it all fell apart, she realized she'd been living in a glass cage too long. I don't want to see that happen again. I looked at him for a long moment. My gaze held a rare, unguarded gratitude, free from the fear that had long shadowed me. Thank you, truly. David just nodded, saying nothing more. As the truck turned onto the small street leading to my house, I finally saw what I hadn't dared face for so many years. I no longer believed that Travis was my entire world. That world had been shattered by his own hands when he left me in the storm. The truck came to a stop. David opened the door for me, his voice gentle but firm. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow think about protecting yourself. From here on, the choices are yours. I stepped out, inhaling the scent of rain lingering in the air. The gate to my house appeared before me, not as a safe haven, but as the starting point of a new journey. Morning light streamed through the window blinds, casting beams on the raindrops still clinging to the bedroom glass. I lay motionless on the sofa, my body exhausted but my mind clearer than ever. I hadn't slept all night. Every image, every word from Travis replayed, tearing through the fog I had used to shield my life. I couldn't sit still. My hands trembled as I held my phone, but this time not from fear. It was because I knew it was time to act. I scrolled through my contacts, past names that once felt close but now seemed distant. Then I stopped at one name. Charlotte Evans, my once best friend, who went to law school with me, now a well-known attorney in Raleigh. I hadn't called her in years, not because I didn't miss her, but because Travis always made me feel those relationships were a hassle. I hit call. The ringing echoed in my ears, my heart pounding with each tone. Riley? Charlotte's voice came through, surprised but warm. Oh my goodness, it's been years. How are you? I didn't waste time. Charlotte, I need help, urgently. The warmth in her voice gave way to the focused tone I remembered. What happened? Tell me. I took a deep breath, giving her the short version. Travis left me in the storm, the account nearly empty, and I suspected he'd planned this for a long time so I'd have nothing. Charlotte was silent for a few seconds, then said with certainty, Don't leave the house. Don't sign anything. And don't listen to any promises. 1 hour. I'll be there. I put down the phone, feeling a hint of warmth slip into the cold I'd endured for so many days. Charlotte arrived as she promised, the same presence. Hair neatly tied up, dark blazer, carrying a document bag and a laptop. When she saw me, she didn't ask unnecessary questions, just gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze and stepped into the living room. Tell me everything, from the beginning, leave nothing out. I sat down, my voice still shaky as I recounted it all. The dinner the night before, the argument that wasn't quite an argument, the way Travis left, the account balance, and even the times he acted strangely, but I hadn't dared to question him. Charlotte opened her laptop, typing rapidly. Listen, Riley. I'll be direct. What Travis did isn't just unethical. It shows signs of legal violations. In North Carolina, marriage is a financial partnership. He can't just withdraw shared funds, hide assets, and vanish like that. We're taking action immediately. I looked at her, my eyes stinging. He planned this so well, Charlotte. I'm scared. It's too late. Charlotte looked up, determination shining in her eyes. It's never too late. Unless you don't stand up. Now let's make a plan. First, I'll file a motion with the court to freeze all marital assets until this is sorted out. Second, I need you to provide every piece of evidence, statements, emails, texts, any documents. Third, I'll hire a forensic accountant to comb through Travis's finances. She handed me a sheet of paper. Write down everything you can remember. Shared accounts, assets, unusual expenses recently. Don't worry about getting it perfect, all information helps. I lowered my gaze and began to write, each word feeling like a release of the anguish I had carried. Charlotte worked through my bank records on her laptop, her brows drawing together as she spotted suspicious transactions. He didn't just take cash, he transferred money into an unknown account. This is asset concealment. Don't worry, Riley. We'll see this through. An hour passed. The room was filled with papers, but I no longer felt lost. Charlotte closed her laptop, looking directly at me. Tomorrow I'll file the petition in court. From now on, if Travis calls or texts, don't respond. All communication goes through me. You just focus on getting ready for this fight. I gripped the paper in my hand, feeling for the first time that I wasn't afraid of hearing Travis's voice in my head anymore. That morning, the Raleigh sky seemed to empty out the last of the storm's rage. Gray clouds swirled in layers, wind whispering through the roadside trees. I stood before the Wake County Courthouse, clutching my purse, trying to keep myself from shaking with nerves. Charlotte stood beside me, dark coat, hair pinned up, her calm expression giving me strength. Are you ready? Charlotte's voice was steady and grounding, anchoring me in the storm of emotions. I swallowed hard, looking at the large doors ahead. I don't know what ready means anymore, but I won't back down. The corner of Charlotte's mouth lifted in an encouraging smile, her gaze steady and supportive. We stepped inside. The air in the courthouse was different, cold, heavy. But it was where I was about to put an end to the years of manipulation I hadn't even seen. Travis was already there. He sat beside his lawyer, a graying man in an expensive suit, his face carrying an air of smug confidence. Travis wore the suit I'd seen him wear to big meetings, every crease in place. But his eyes avoided mine. I drew a deep breath and took my seat. When Judge Diane Monroe entered, the room fell silent. Her silver hair was tied neatly back, her gaze stern but not cold. Known for her nickname, the curtain cutter, she was famous for never letting emotion or theatrics cloud the truth. The hearing began. Charlotte rose first, her voice steady, unwavering. Your Honor, today we are filing an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets between Mrs. Riley Hale and Mr. Travis Hale, in order to prevent ongoing concealment or dissipation of property. We also request temporary use of the marital home and a support allowance to ensure my client's basic living needs while this matter is resolved. Charlotte presented the evidence clearly: records of suspicious cash withdrawals, an email Travis sent to a brokerage firm regarding asset transfers, bank statements, and testimony about Travis abandoning me in the storm without money or transportation. Travis's lawyer stood, offering a polished smile. Your Honor, this is merely a misunderstanding between two adults. Mr. Travis acted under emotional strain with no intent to defraud or abandon. The withdrawals were solely for business purposes, not to hide assets. Judge Monroe clasped her hands, her gaze sharp as a blade. You're saying leaving one's spouse in a storm nearly 50 miles from home without money or transportation is emotional strain, and the large withdrawal at that same time is coincidental? The attorney hesitated. Travis cleared his throat, rising, his tone as smooth as during boardroom presentations. Your Honor, Riley and I have had disagreements. I thought space would help us both reflect. I didn't expect things to be misunderstood so negatively. I'm sorry if that hurt her. Charlotte gave him no room to recover. And what about the accounts, the suspicious transactions, the email negotiating the sale of marital property without my client's knowledge? Is that the space you intended to create? Judge Monroe tapped her gavel lightly. The court finds sufficient grounds to issue the emergency order. All marital assets are frozen until this matter is resolved. Mrs. Riley Hale is granted temporary use of the marital home and $2,000 per month in temporary support to cover basic needs. I looked at Travis. For a moment his calm mask cracked. His eyes held anger, but also shock. He hadn't expected me, the woman who once silently stayed behind him, to stand here, facing the truth. As the judge declared the hearing adjourned, Charlotte leaned over and whispered, "The first step, we've protected what's yours, now it's his turn to worry." I left the courthouse walking steadier than I had entered. The sky was still gray, but inside me a sliver of light had begun to break through. 3 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Raleigh's early morning was still damp from the night's heavy rain. I sat in the living room, hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea that I couldn't even feel the warmth of. Inside me, anticipation and dread swirled like crashing waves. Today, Charlotte was bringing the results of the financial investigation she and the forensic accounting team had quietly conducted. A knock at the door startled me. Charlotte entered, followed by a man around 50, tall and lean, silver-rimmed glasses, carrying a thick file. "Riley, this is Mr. Anderson, the forensic specialist I hired. He's uncovered things. You'll need to brace yourself." I swallowed hard, nodded, my gaze fixed on the file Anderson set on the table. "May I begin, Mrs. Hale?" He opened the file, his voice calm, but every word sliced at the last bits of trust I had left. "After 3 weeks of reviewing transactions, contracts, tax filings, and both public and private data, we've determined Mr. Travis Hale deliberately concealed a substantial amount of assets. Our initial findings exceed $11 million. My ears rang. I gripped the chair to keep from collapsing. Charlotte placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, a silent reminder to stay strong. Anderson flipped through the file. "First, there's a shell company called Westlake Solutions, formed in Delaware 2 years ago, registered under an unknown partner, but actually controlled by Mr. Travis. This entity received internal transfers from his main business, then invested in real estate and vehicles titled through multiple legal layers." I froze as he pointed to a photo of documents for a large house in Arizona, paid for entirely in cash. "Next, a luxury condo in Miami owned by another company, created less than a year ago. Vehicles, a Lucid Air electric car worth nearly $130,000, titled to the company but insured through your joint account." Charlotte let out a dry laugh, unable to hide the bitterness. "So you were helping finance his deception." Anderson gave a brief glance of agreement, then turned another page. "We also found regular transfers to a Cayman Islands account, structured in small amounts to avoid detection. Nearly $3 million moved over the past 2 years. And," Anderson paused, his gaze heavy as if reluctant to go on, "prepared a fake asset division agreement complete with a forged signature from you. This document was stored in his personal cloud in a secured folder. If you hadn't taken legal action, he likely intended to use it to legitimize a divorce that stripped you of nearly everything." I felt my chest tighten, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Charlotte slid the file toward me. "Look at this, Riley. There's no more doubt. This was a calculated plan, from every transfer to every cover-up. He wasn't panicked. He didn't act on impulse. He mapped out his escape route." I turned each page, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Every figure, every record was like a knife, but also peeled away the layers of Travis's mask. Charlotte leaned back, her voice slow but firm. "We're filing this with the court. I'll request a full investigation, freeze any undisclosed assets, and seek division of everything we've uncovered. You can also claim damages for fraud and forgery." "I'll do it. Not for the money. For the truth, for the years I lost myself." Charlotte smiled, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. "This is the Riley I always knew." That morning, the Wake County Courthouse was busier than usual. The night's rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy with moisture, much like the weight in my chest as I climbed the courthouse steps. Charlotte walked beside me, calm as ever, a thick file tucked firmly under her arm. Travis was already seated inside the courtroom, under the cold white lights. He still wore a neatly pressed suit, but his face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. His lawyer looked far less arrogant than he had at the first hearing. Both of them cast glances at me that were cautious, tense, a stark contrast to their earlier confidence. The proceedings began. Judge Monroe appeared, carrying that same dignified presence I had always respected. She gave a small nod to both sides, then went straight to the matter at hand. We are here today to hear final arguments and issue a ruling on the division of assets and damages related to financial fraud and signature forgery. The plaintiff may proceed. Charlotte rose, her voice clear and precise, slicing through the illusion Travis had built. Your Honor, we have presented and proven through financial records, expert testimony, and verified documents that Mr. Travis Hale engaged in asset concealment, created shell companies, hid funds overseas, and even forged Mrs. Riley Hale's signature to prepare for a divorce that would leave her with nothing. This is not only a violation of financial duty in marriage but a blatant breach of the law. Today, we seek fair judgment. At least 60% of all marital assets awarded to my client, sole ownership of the marital home, damages equivalent to the harm caused, and that Mr. Travis Hale bear all legal costs of this case. The room fell silent. Travis looked at me, his gaze no longer confident, only anxious. Mr. Davis stood, adjusting his tie, struggling to keep his voice even. Your Honor, my client acknowledges missteps in financial management but denies any intent to defraud. His actions were driven by work stress and temporary emotional strain. We request a 50-50 division of assets and an unconditional settlement to help both parties move on. Charlotte gave a faint knowing smile, offering no rebuttal. Our evidence spoke loudly enough for their defense to collapse on its own. Judge Monroe flipped through the documents before her, tapping her gavel lightly. The court finds that Mr. Travis Hale's actions were deliberate, prolonged over several years, and constituted serious deception. The concealment of assets, signature forgery, and creation of shell companies cannot be dismissed as missteps or emotional strain. I held my breath. The court orders. Mrs. Riley Hale shall receive 60% of all identified marital assets, sole ownership of the home on North Pine, and $500,000 in damages. Mr. Travis Hale shall cover all legal fees related to this case. I could hear my heartbeat thudding. Travis hung his head, his shoulders trembling slightly. Mr. Davis sighed and began packing up his papers without meeting his client's eyes. Charlotte placed a hand on my back, whispering, "You've won, not because of the money, but because you reclaimed justice." Travis looked up, his lips parted as if to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. I rose, thanked the judge, and left the courtroom, my steps steadier than they had ever been. Outside, sunlight pierced the gray clouds, casting soft beams on the courthouse steps. I breathed deeply, tasting the sweetness of freedom in every breath. In this battle, I was no longer the woman left behind in the storm. 3 months after the final ruling, the house on North Pine was fully mine, with Travis's name erased from every document. The day the bank sent confirmation that the mortgage had been paid off with funds Travis was ordered to transfer, I stood on my porch holding a can of paint, repainting the front door a deep olive green. The color of peace. Of a new beginning I once thought I'd never reach. David showed up that afternoon carrying a file box and 2 cups of hot coffee. "This is the draft plan for that organization you mentioned. I've looked it over. It's absolutely doable." I took it, my eyes misting as I read the title, Beacon Haven Foundation, a guiding light for women to reclaim themselves. I had come up with that name on sleepless nights, remembering that stormy evening that changed my life. The truth slipped from my lips, quiet but certain. I don't want to save just myself. I want women like me to have a place to start again. Charlotte was the first to offer her support, eagerly connecting with partners, raising funds, and volunteering free legal advice for the women who came to us. David handled security and logistics, creating safe systems and networks. Matt, my cousin I'd lost touch with because of Travis, managed the technology, building the website and record system to ensure total confidentiality. We rented a small office in Raleigh's historic district. The walls were painted a soft cream, and the only artwork was a picture of a woman holding an umbrella in a downpour. Her gaze fixed on the sun breaking through at the horizon. Every day, I grew stronger, not from what I had won in court, but from seeing the women who walked through that door. Their eyes, first filled with fear, slowly began to hold hope. One afternoon, as I was sorting files, an unmarked envelope slid through the mail slot. I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single photo. Travis, standing before a rundown house in another state, his face hollow, his eyes empty. On the back, a scrawled note. "You are never supposed to win." I stared at the words for a long time. I should have felt anger. But instead, I felt a strange, profound peace. because at that moment, I knew I had won. Not for the assets, not for the judge's ruling. I folded the photo and placed it in a file marked closed. That night, David, Charlotte, Matt, and I sat on the porch, watching the city lights twinkle softly in the night. "Do you think Travis will try to bother you again?" David asked, his eyes on the distance. I shook my head. Might try, but he no longer holds the one thing that mattered most: control over me. Charlotte clinked her glass to mine. "And you turned pain into strength. That's the kind of victory no one can take away." We talked about Beacon Haven's next steps: opening a branch office in Durham, partnering with an emergency housing center, hosting community awareness workshops. I knew the road ahead would be long. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to walk it. My story isn't just about reclaiming justice from a deceitful marriage. It's about finding myself again after years of living under subtle control. From the woman who once trembled in the storm, I rose and rebuilt my life with my own hands and heart. Beacon Haven stands as proof of that strength, so no woman has to walk through the darkness alone again. And today, I know. True strength doesn't come from beating someone else. It comes from overcoming the fear inside you. What do you think about Riley's journey and the choices she made to change her life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, meaningful family stories.